News now this morning, we're asking, are young people ashamed of being English? A recent YouGov poll has found that only 45% of 18 to 24-year-olds are proud to be from England. That's compared to 72% for over 65s. But what could have caused so many young people to feel embarrassed by their Englishness? Well, here to talk it over, we have the writer Charlie Peters and the journalist and millennial commentator Benjamin Butterworth. Good morning to you both. Both in that 18 to 24 category. Charlie, are you embarrassed to be English?
I'm not at all, no. I think the reason why so many young people today perhaps don't feel the same pull to England as previous generations might have is they haven't been through a collective struggle that previous generations have. They haven't had to unite together in a way that people through both hot and cold wars, economic crisis, political issues. There's been tough times for England over the last 50 years or so. But this generation, really, our main problem is a low supply of housing. That's the really thing that's getting to us. We haven't really got a reason to come together and unite collectively.
Yeah, nothing that unites us, plenty that divides us at the moment. Benjamin, are you embarrassed to be English?
Well, maybe I wouldn't go as far as embarrassed, but I just don't feel any sense of connection with England. You know, when I think about growing up and reading about my country and the history, you'd see Henry VIII sort of chopping off the heads of his wives and marauding around the place. You'd read about wars between different counties, and then you'd turn on the TV and who would be waving the English flag? But, you know, some football hooligan or Tommy Robinson or the English Defence League. Those are the only associations with Englishness that I've really come across. And so it's hard to say why you'd have any sense of association with that. I am far more linked to being a Londoner or being a European or even being British, which I see as modern and diverse and outward looking. But Englishness is just something to be a bit ashamed of these days.
Charlie, Benjamin raises a good point there. I mean, we're looking at the image behind there of the St George's flag and the fact that that's been appropriated by far-right groups, football hooligans and the like. The Englishman abroad hasn't got a particularly good reputation in Europe, for example.
No, you're absolutely right. But regardless, I think the main concern of that is because there's been decades of sneering from the media class, political class and academia towards Englishness. It's seen as embarrassing to be proud to be English. You don't, interestingly, have the same problem when people say they're proud to be Welsh or proud to be Scottish or Irish. But as soon as someone says they're proud to be English, there is a kind of an intake of breath and a bit of an awkwardness. Oh, look at this bigot or this silly person over here with this xenophobic attitude. So there's space for mild and proper patriotism, but it's been sneered away and left space only for extreme people who might want to throw chairs in Marseille or join marches in Newcastle about the EDR and stuff like that.
It's interesting, Benjamin, if you don't like telling people you're English, would you be more proud to say you are British, for example?
Absolutely, because, you know, whenever you go abroad, if you say English, the sad fact is that you really do think about thuggery and hooliganism and, you know, people that drink too much on holiday. Now, I don't think we're really like that. You know, of course, I am English, so I know there are lots of great English people. And yet, when you say you're British, you think of, you know, Meghan and Harry's beautiful wedding. You think of an outward country. When I think of British, I think of a country that puts the pride flag up in June for LGBT pride.
It's happening in England, so I don't understand the difference between being proud to be British but being ashamed to be English.
And yet the people that have taken Englishness are the opposite of that. They're the people that are, you know, older people, conservative people, Leave voters. And what this poll found was that they're twice as likely to be proud of English if you're in those categories. You know, I was born in Manchester, I live in the London borough of Lambeth, I voted Remain and I support the Labour Party and I'm young. And all of those groups, under half, support being English. And actually, whatever you think of Englishness, that should be a big concern to those that support it, because it's only going to get less supportive of Englishness in the future.
That's your representation of Englishness. Charlie, what does being English mean to you?
It means a connection with my past, loving every field and hedgerow, knowing the music, the culture, the beauty, the architecture and its meaning, recognising the powerful institutions that have maintained a civility and a gloriousness over 1,000 years.
It's interesting, I was reading the papers yesterday and one of the tabloids did why we can be proud to be English, and there was everything in that list from fish and chips and a cup of tea to our history, Shakespeare, St George, Queen Elizabeth II. Sir David Attenborough was in there as well. I've got an exclusive interview with him tomorrow here on Sunrise as well. Any of that start to change your mind, Benjamin, when you think of the White Cliffs of Dover, when you think of the Beatles, the England football team?
It's glorious.
Well, yeah, that's the point. You think of the Beatles, that was the 60s when they were in the heyday. You think of the football team, well, it's half a century since they won the World Cup. These are things that simply don't mean something to someone of my generation. When I think of pride and patriotism and being British, I think of, I used to live in Streatham in South London, where there's a gay bar, a mosque and a church all sat next to each other. I think of my French neighbours and the Muslim family below me in the flats I live in. These are things that are modern Britain, not the old-fashioned Little England.
So you're looking to the future. Charlie, you seem to be relying on the past to be
potentially,
proud.
but none of the things that Benjamin is talking about are uniquely English. None of them that are saying, oh, this is modern Britain, this is modern England, these are great English things. You can find those things all over the world. It's a more of a cosmopolitan and normal thing that you'll find elsewhere.
But what
makes England special are things that are uniquely English. Many of those great institutions I've referenced, the royal family, small things like pubs, which we lose about 30 a week. These little things that make England special, we're losing out.
If we had just England and not the rest of the UK, that so many of the dominant people and politicians within England, the Nigel Farage et al., would gladly not have all those things I just talked about.
I don't think so. I think the natural... Well, Nigel Farage, I think, is a little bit more conservative than you, perhaps, and would probably be keener to keep many of the institutions I've referenced. But no, I mean, I'm English, but I'm also proud to be British. Britishness is part of being English because we are joined with 3 other nations.
It's interesting, in this survey, in the north, younger people were more proud of being English. So there's a regional disparity as well.
I mean, I think it's got a lot to do with class and whether people identify with whether being patriotic to English. There was some evidence that being working class and you were more likely to feel English. I don't go for that. I just think that there is a diversity to Britishness because it is by nature a coming together of different cultures and different nations. And that's what I think means something as opposed to Englishness. Sometimes it feels like the problem with England is there are too many English people. The fact is that Britain has
Charlie
that diversity.
hanging his head there.
England has higher levels of immigration than Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So if the problem with England is that there's too many English people, then, well, I'm unsure why that's the same case with Scotland or other nations. England is uniquely English, not because it has too many English people, because it has people who love its institutions, who love what it stands for and the past that they can recognise. OK,
we'll keep your thoughts coming into us this morning. Charlie Peters and Benjamin Butterworth, thank you very much. Are you proud to be English? Let us know. Jonathan...